Ethan Budowsky as well, part of Fish Stripes, and he is a beat writer for the Gators as well. Ethan, my guy, how are you?
Good, Kev. It's good to be here, man. Of course, I've enjoyed our streams together this season, and now I'm honored to be the first guest in Fish Stripes Unfiltered history. Looking forward to chatting some Marlins with you guys.
Isaac, how are you, my guy?
Good, man. Good to be here. Like Ethan said, we all do Fish Stripes lives together, and now we have the honor of having Ethan as our first guest. That's our inaugural guest, and today we'll be talking, going back to some of the trades that this new regime has made, and go into what's going on with the team nowadays, and maybe some Major League Baseball talk as well.
Yep. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and follow us on any podcast site you guys listen to us on. So let's get started. Ethan, it's been a tough season to watch as a Marlins fan. What do you think about the Marlins this season and some off-season expectations?
Well, Kev, at the end of the day, it's really going to turn out to be kind of what I expected from a win total standpoint. They have a pretty solid chance here of getting to 70 wins, which is kind of the threshold that I set for them before the season, because they haven't gotten to 70 wins since 2017. So it looked really ugly. It looked even more ugly at points than I thought it would. Obviously, coming off the playoff appearance, you just kind of wanted to see them look, even if they struggled and they didn't put up a ton of wins, you wanted to see them look good and play fun, the way that they did at points last year. But they just haven't been very fun, haven't been very entertaining, honestly. It's been a lot of poor baseball. Lack of offense has been, I think, the storyline of the year. But, when we had Craig Mish on Fish Stripes Live, he kind of talked about how it all comes down to the Anthony Bass signing, and that's kind of where it all went wrong this year. And when you really look at it, and I've been thinking about it a lot since he said that, it really is kind of true, because the Marlins have been in pretty much every game they've been in, and we know they can compete with any team. They've beaten the Dodgers, they've beaten the Giants, they've handled some of the better teams in the league. They played the Braves well this year. At the end of the day, it comes down to they haven't been able to pull out close games, and they've given a lot of games away at the end. And the bullpen just hasn't been good enough, and the offense hasn't been good enough to make up for the poor bullpen. So, there's a lot of factors that went into what happened this year, but I really do kind of am starting to agree with Craig that at the end of the day, that is really what it came. That's where it all started. That's the root of the problem, I would say.
Yeah, now that you mention it, and I think since Craig has mentioned it, I think we could agree that many of the games Anthony Bass was in, he blew them. That's pretty much, and I think the Marlins, without blowing those games, or not blowing all of them, but a good majority of them, if you didn't blow them, we would be, I think, in a different position right now than what we are in right now. And I don't know if you could agree with me, Isaac.
Yeah, no, like Ethan said, you have the shitty bullpen here, and then you add to that, the really, crappy offense to go along with it. And what you get is a lot of losses by 1 or 2 runs. And you're one good reliever, two good relievers away, and a couple bats from really putting a competent team out there. But their bullpen really, really struggled to begin the season. You started the season 1-5, 1-6. I don't remember what it was, and it's just a tough hole, and it's just so disheartening when it's losing the games in the 9th inning. It happened in New York by Anthony Bass. It happened on the second game of the season by Anthony Bass. He gave up a homer to Wendell. And all those things are just so deflating to an offense where they just weren't able to recover from it.
And you really come to look at it. Yeah.
Sorry, that number in 1-run games is 19 and 27. And it's just –
It got better.
It got better. They kind of figured it out in a way. But, yeah. 19 and 27. At the beginning of the year, it was kind of even more unbalanced than that. We were all like, okay, this can't be sustainable. It'll kind of balance out. They're not going to go 500 in 1-run games this year, which is kind of what you want to do. And at the end of the day, those 8 games are huge. If you swing them around to 500 and you're talking about 19 and 27 is 46 or something like that. And if you're 23 and 23, you're looking a lot better, and you're really close to 70 wins with a few games left. So, it's there's been a lot of factors, but still, there's a good chance, with 2 more against the Nationals, and then they like to steal games from teams like the Phillies and the Mets and even the Rays, there's still a good chance that the Marlins could get to 70 wins here, and that wouldn't be considering all that terrible.
Yeah, and I think, Craig didn't mention this, but Yimi Garcia really blew a lot of games for this team.
No,
pretty
right,
much
Kev.
towards the end of his time with the Marlins, because at the beginning, we thought this guy was a legitimate closer. This guy really looked good, and then he just started to go on a decline. And I think that's something else worth to mention. And obviously, there's no excuses, but injuries were a big part of why the Marlins couldn't succeed. I mean, Starling Marte immediately gets injured, I think, second game of the season. Eliezer gets injured his first start, makes his whole rehab, returns in his first game against Pittsburgh, gets injured. And then it's just a lot of these other guys getting injured. And I'm not going to mention those two injuries. Only Mickey got injured at some point. Jazz was injured through a good portion of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And you really come to look at it, Miami really did have a lot of injuries. And now we go in the offseason open-minded. I mean, what are you expecting for this offseason, Ethan?
Well, just to touch on the injuries, Kevin, I think a huge part of it was they never had until like August or September, they never had more than 3 consistent arms really locked into the rotation spots, because Eliezer went down right away, and they started the year with 4 guys because they were hoping that Sixto would be ready, and then he had a setback. This, that, and the other, and it was just all ugly. And that is also kind of where it started, where they had to use the bullpen so much that it put too much pressure on the bullpen. It taxed too many guys. They were overworked. And then the bullpen, as we know, has kind of, been very up and down this year. They've had great stretches. They've had terrible stretches. But, in terms of the offseason, Kev, I have high hopes. I'm not going to lie. And it might be dangerous because I had high hopes for last offseason as well. I thought they would really make some improvements last offseason, and they didn't really go for it last offseason. The Duvall signing was obviously a good one. That has been nixed because just what they did with Duvall and how poor that trade has gone down. But, I know they're going to go out and get a center fielder, and I think they're going to go out and get a big-time center fielder. And, I think the guy, I've said this a lot across multiple different platforms on Fish Stripes, I think the guy that you got to go after is Brian Reynolds. I think he's just the perfect match for what Miami needs. He's young, he's controllable, he hits, he plays defense in center field, proven at the big league level, and, you got to give up value to get value, and he's the exact kind of value that they need. So I would be willing to give up some, if I'm the Marlins, really willing to give up some value for him. Go ahead, Isaac. Yeah.
Oh, and just that the Marlins were able to see him firsthand a couple of times this season. He homered off them in Pittsburgh, and he had a decent series down here in Miami. So I mean, if you needed like any other excuse to say, hey, to be sold on the guy, he was right there in front of you, playing really well, playing on a bad team, but he really is a star in the making. And I think, like you said, he'd be a perfect center fielder for the Miami Marlins next year.
Yeah, I actually,
and I don't think it stops at center field. Yeah, go ahead, Kev.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think it stops at center field for the Marlins. Everybody knows that the catcher spot needs an upgrade, and I definitely think they pursued catching options last year. So I definitely think that they're going to go for some more catching options this year, whether that's Wilson Contreras, whether that's Jacob Stallings from another Pirate. The guy I really like is Max Stassi. Mitch Garver is another name that I think could be attractive for the Marlins. Good hitting catchers. They need offense out of that position. I think one of the things that a lot of people are looking for in this offseason is more than just who they acquire. It's who do they move on from? It's time to cut ties with the dead weight that they've been carrying around a lot of this season. So you're talking Alfaro, you're talking Sierra, Isan Diaz, they just sent him down in September. It doesn't get worse than that. Like being sent down in September is pretty much, they already, gave Jazz the job over him in spring training. So they already nixed him there. And now they send him down in September. That's as bad as it gets. So I really think those guys are kind of out of the organization. I know a lot of people want Brinson gone, and they think it's just time for him to move on. But I wouldn't mind seeing him have a roster spot next year as like a 5th outfielder. But so a lot of the decisions that need to be made are important decisions about who to move on from to get this thing going just kind of move on from. Hold on, sorry. I was going to sneeze. So kind of move on from some of the mistakes that they made in this organization. Obviously the Yelich trade. There's a good chance all 4 of the guys in the Yelich trade, and we'll talk about that in a bit, are out of the organization by next year. So they just kind of got to get ruthless. That's the next step for them, and cut ties with some of these guys. Because that's an easy way to improve the roster as much as, acquiring guys is an easy way to improve the roster. But there are other things besides center field and catcher. I would like to see another corner outfielder. Maybe they go and make an upgrade at third base from Brian Anderson. They haven't been clear on where they stand with him. But I'm curious on what you guys think as well, because there's a lot of other ways they could go in free agency and off season.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I mean, one of the big decisions is Brian De La Cruz. What do you do with this guy? Because we thought this guy he started off hot. We thought he would go down, 260 batting average. We mentioned this yesterday. And then all of a sudden, this guy, he's getting better and better. I mean, there's no stopping this guy. He's literally unstoppable. I mean, he's up in the stats with Mike Trout, I'm pretty sure, in some cases. I mean, what do you guys think he does do with him? Because let's say they do get Brian Reynolds. He would still have a spot in the outfield. They would have to get someone better than Brian De La Cruz to put him as a 4th outfielder, which is a really good case. It would be a great scenario because you have 3 other guys who are a lot better than Brian De La Cruz, which means you made a huge improvement in the offseason. I think something else we could look at is the bullpen because, man, that bullpen is not good. And I think they could revamp it again for sure. I talked about Craig Kimbrell. I talked about Andrew Chafin on the last podcast. Those are very good options. I would love Kimbrell because it would just solidify the closer role. I think it wouldn't put Anthony Bender in that situation. It just makes a lot of sense. And then we talk about trading. I mean, I think Max Kepler and Mitch Garver are a really good option. I think would be a lot cheaper than Brian Reynolds and Jacob Stallings. You get any of those combos, you get either Reynolds or Kepler, you're set. I mean, that's perfect. And then you get either Mitch Garver or Jacob Stallings. I think that would make a lot of sense as well. It's just, what do you give back? I think Max Meyer would 100% be in a trade if you got Reynolds and Stallings. I don't think he would be in a trade for Garver and Kepler, though.
Yeah, if you're looking at Minnesota and you're looking at getting the cornerstone outfielder, you got to look at Byron Buxton before you look at Max Kepler. Like for me, Kepler would be a guy. You got Reynolds and you got Stallings. Now you can go get Kepler. But for me, if I don't have Reynolds yet, I'm looking at Byron Buxton, and I might even look at him before Reynolds. The only concern there is the injuries, and also having to sign him to an extension. Right out, they would have to guarantee that they're going to pay him an extension because you do not want another Starling Marte situation. That's for sure. So Buxton would be a guy I would look at as well. But yeah, bullpen help. We talked about Garrett Cooper. Kind of seems like the odd man out. I wouldn't mind for some bullpen help. I think an AL team would love to, go with the bullpen, but or would love to take Cooper and make him a DH because of his durability issues. But man, Kim, I don't see them spending big on a big money closer. I just hope they go out and get a strikeout guy at the back end if they're going to spend money on a closer instead of opting once again for a ground ball guy, because that was a huge mistake in philosophy from them.
Yeah, no, and you look at the 2 most expensive relievers in baseball, it'd be Kenley Jansen and Aroldis Chapman, and they haven't exactly, performed that well. Obviously, they're fun to have. They're great, they'll bring people to the ballpark, but they're not playing that well. And so it is a little bit of a sketchy situation to put that much money into a reliever, especially the Miami Marlins. They're not going to do that. They're not dumb like they were with Jeffrey Loria. Loria offered Chapman, I think it was $80 million. Thankfully, that didn't happen. And when it comes to the center field discussion, yeah, I think Ethan is totally right. You go after a stud center fielder. That's who they're going to go after. That's what I've heard. It's either going to be Brian Reynolds, a guy like Byron Buxton, maybe Cedric Mullins, like a star center fielder. And once you have that, then you maybe get a complimentary piece such as Max Kepler or someone like that to, maybe platoon with Brian De La Cruz, because De La Cruz has played well enough. I've said this now a couple of times to really not cement himself as a starter, but he's definitely going to be in the spring training, starting most of the games and seeing if he can, carry over that success into March and April. So I would think it's a mistake to just hand him over a left field starting job, but he would be the best 4th outfielder in all of baseball. That's for sure.
Yeah. No, I forgot that I forgot that's kind of where the question started, was about De La Cruz and what do you do with him? He's obviously on the roster next year.
Yeah.
And I think that you sign a corner outfielder, a Duvall, a Rosario, trade for a Kepler, somebody not on the top end, but maybe in a like second or third tier guy in the corner outfield spot. And you say, all right, the two of you go out there in spring training and what do you win the job? And maybe platoon them, but De La Cruz is shown to be good against both sides of the plate, so his splits aren't necessarily egregious. So, you don't necessarily need a platoon there, but I would just kind of create some competition in camp and, give somebody a chance to beat him. But if he beats out anybody they bring in, he's been so fantastic. And you're right, Kevin, you said it. He's only gotten better. He flashed every tool. I said in his first couple of weeks, he flashed every tool in the uniform. And then the power started clicking in. And now all of a sudden he's got like 5 home runs, 6 home runs, whatever. And for a guy who we don't think is going to hit for a lot of power, to play this many games, which hasn't been a lot, and to have 6 home runs is pretty impressive. So, yeah, I'm super high on this guy. And I think you're right, Isaac. He could definitely be, if not the best, one of the best corner outfielder, fourth outfielders in the sport. And I think I've said this a lot. If the Marlins, if he's their fourth outfielder, man, they had a good offseason. And it's going to be something that Marlins fans should be really excited about for sure.
Yeah, and the guy is slugging close to 500 in Lone Depot Park. He's hitting, he's impacting the baseball. I assume he's only going to get stronger in the offseason. And, yeah, like you said, we need just that one more corner outfield to supplement the center field stud that we don't know who it's going to be, to go along with Jesus Sanchez in right. And, wow, it could be a really formidable offense all of a sudden.
Yeah. And if you really – go ahead, Kev. Go ahead.
And I know Craig counted out these guys, but you look at Ketel Marte, he fits the Marlins perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the one I really liked was Cedric Mullins, but I don't see it happening now. Even though Craig said no, I wouldn't mind looking at it. But we talk about Brandon Marsh now. That was something that almost happened, and it was a 1-for-1. Could have been it was Max Meyer for Brandon Marsh. Something happened that the trade talks just all of a sudden didn't go through. And that's for sure an option I think the Marlins will look at. And maybe we talked about on the Fish Stripes chat about Bryson Bergman. Maybe he's a trade sweetener that the Marlins may use.
Yeah, with Marsh, they better get that one right if they go for him. If they do Meyer for Marsh, they cannot miss, because man, I'm looking at these numbers. 37% strikeout rate. He's walking at a pretty good clip. 87 runs created plus. It's not bad numbers for a young guy. Like it seems like this guy makes the right adjustments in the offseason, will be a pretty good hitter in the league. But if they trade Max for him, they got to get it right, because Max has been so fantastic. And I'm looking at it and I'm saying, do everything you can to avoid trading Max for a Brian Reynolds or a Byron Buxton. I think they'll have to. But man, it would be really tough to trade Max Meyer and get Brandon Marsh and then have him struggle. And it would be kind of like a Gallen for Jazz like trade. Hopefully it would work out for both teams, but yeah, man, they would have to get that one right. And I'm kind of souring on that one with some of the other options that they have available.
I would say that Brian De La Cruz probably has a higher floor than Brandon Marsh.
Yes,
Brandon Marsh usually just not come up and hit. It's very possible. He put up decent minor league numbers, but he's striking out an astounding amount. Brian De La Cruz has never really struck out that much, and Marsh could easily just not come up and hit at all. So I think De La Cruz would be a safer bet. So to give away Max Meyer for Brandon Marsh at this stage, and Marsh has been playing for a while now. How many at-bats does he have? He has 215 plate appearances. 215 plate appearances. So he hasn't hit, and that's a pretty big sample size. It's around half a season. So I definitely wouldn't risk Max Meyer for him at this point. I kind of was like, all right, maybe on the fence about it when it was reported, because it was a much smaller sample size, but now he's still not hitting. And if we're going to give away Max Meyer, it better be for a proven commodity like Brian Reynolds.
Do you guys think any team would actually look into Eater at this point, even though with the Tommy John?
Yeah.
I think that's someone they're going to have to look at. And if the Marlins could trade him over Meyer, I would do it in a heartbeat.
A team like the Pirates might be really interested in a guy like Eater, because they're so far away and they're going to want the lower level guys. They're going to want a guy like Jose Salas or Uri Perez or Yidi Cap. They're going to want those low-level minor leaguers. And Jake Eder, unfortunately, he wasn't before, but now with the Tommy John that set him back about a year, he's now a guy who maybe will be closer to big league ready when the Pirates are closer to big league ready. So maybe that's someone that the Pirates would prefer, which, would be fine with me. Tommy John, it's got a pretty high success rate, as JJ Cooper was getting into with you guys, Ethan and Eli.
Mm-hmm.
But, now at this point, I liked Eder a lot, but now with the surgery and Max Meyer just performing the way he did in his first pro season ever, I would keep the guy.
Yeah, and somebody is definitely going to want Eder because he had such a great year. There's no doubt about that. They might not be able to do like a, Eder for Marsh swap, which is something that I would invite more than a Max for Marsh swap. Yeah. A couple of weeks ago, a couple months ago, but yeah, they're not going to be able to pull off something like that where he's the headline piece anymore. They can still trade him and get some good value. But it's going to have to be a team like you said, the Pirates, the Orioles, somebody that's far away that says, okay, we can be patient with this kid, wait for him to have Tommy John surgery, because he's going to be all out all of next season. So he's going to miss all of next year. He won't pitch again until 2023, which sounds weird to say, but he won't pitch again until 2023. So, you got to get a team that's a couple years away that's willing to say, okay, we'll wait until 2023 for him to pitch in AAA, and then maybe by June or something, he's ready to pitch in the majors. So his timeline has been pushed back quite, a year and a half. He could have been in the majors next year with the way he was pitching in AA. He could have been in AAA at the end of this season. We know Max is going to make a start or two there because of the extra games that AAA has. But yeah, Eder, and I wouldn't rule out him being traded at all.
No, and I'll tell you, I think any team that does trade for Eder, if that happens, they're a smart team. Because Eder was phenomenal, man. And if they look at him and they buy low, quote unquote, for Eder, they're a smart team, bro. Because that guy, he was the most dominant pitcher in all of minor league baseball. He really was, from the left side of the mound.
No, absolutely.
Phenomenal. And so any team that like it says just turns away because of Tommy John, they're not doing their due diligence, because he was outstanding in his first pro season as well.
Yeah, and I think really the Marlins are going to have to be convincing that they're going to have to convince any team to really take this guy on. Even though the Tommy John surgery is one thing, I think that's going to be the main thing actually when you look back into it. Like, our team's really going to want to take a risk on a Jake Eder who got Tommy John, and I think they would. Most of them would, because they saw what he could do.
They did.
Yeah, and I'm going to give you a great example, which we're going to talk about the guy later, Jose Fernandez. Got Tommy John, he came back even better. Yep. So, I mean, you look at Eder, this guy could really come back better.
Yep, and Justin Verlander was another guy.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. I think there's a stat, it's accurate. 1 in all 3 major league pitchers have had Tommy John. 1 in 3. So, the success rate, I don't remember, you remember, Ethan, but it's not 100%, but it's pretty high where, you can say conservatively that he'll come back and he'll be just as good, if not better.
Yeah, and I think, at the end of the day, Eder is going to be one of the big pieces. And if the Marlins really are able to deal Eder instead of Meyer, I think you could call this offseason. I mean, you keep Max Meyer, your best prospect. You invested a top 5 pick into this guy, not like Eder, who you invested a lower pick. This guy kind of surprised us all. He just came through and started really dominating this AA Pensacola level, and then he gets injured. So it's going to be difficult. And I want to ask, is Charlie Blackman a center fielder or a right fielder? Because that would be a pretty good option for them.
No, he sucks.
Yeah, he's been trashed a little bit, and he's probably It's still Charlie Hustle, so he's still probably a little bit. Wait, is he Charlie Hustle? No, he's Chuck Nasty. It's his name. But he's probably a little bit out of their price range, but not having a good couple of years last year, 98 and 93 weighted runs created plus. Charlie Hustle. Who was Charlie Hustle? Pete Rose was Charlie Hustle. I'm stupid. But anyway, I was going to bring something up, but I can't remember now. Oh, I know what it was. If the Marlins have, by the end of the offseason, if they've done their deals and they've gotten, a premier center fielder and a premier catcher, and they feel they've made upgrades at that position, and they still have guys like Max Meyer, Jose Salas, or Yuri Perez, maybe 1 or 2 of those 3 still in the system, they've done a really good job with those deals. And we've seen them do pretty good with a lot of their trades so far. Obviously, a lot of people say that 3 kind of missed, but Pablo trade, huge W. getting Devers is still nice. We'll talk about some of these trades, but pretty good. I've liked the work that they've done in trades for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly where we're going to take it. And I'm going to let you, Isaac, take a little bit more control of this segment, going back on the, we'll start in 2017, but we'll move forward, until today's day, where the Marlins, made all of these trades. But I'm going to let you take over a little bit of, how the regime started all this trading, Stan, Yelich, Ozuna, all those guys.
Well, yeah, so we know it started in the 2017 season. Giancarlo's MVP. You have another MVP candidate in Marcelo Ozuna. You have Yelich playing well. You have an all-star catcher behind the dish. So that team was looking good. And the minute, they started saying it wasn't going to go that well that season, the first trade, we do have David Sampson and Jeffrey Lurie and Michael Hill to thank for this one, which was the David Phelps trade, which happened on July 20th, 2017.
Yeah, good one.
David Phelps was a really good reliever. He was a starter for the Marlins. We got him from the Yankees, and he was a starter for a little bit. And then he got in the bullpen, and his cutter, and he was just phenomenal out of the bullpen. He really was one of the best relievers the Marlins had that year. And they traded him at a great timing because he ended up needing Tommy John shortly after the trade. And in return, the Marlins got Brian Hernandez, who's a center fielder who was no longer with the organization, I don't believe. Brandon Miller and, Pablo Lopez came in that trade. And so for really no years of control of David Phelps, the Marlins secured a top 3 starter in their rotation for the next 4 or 5 years. So that was an A+ trade. I have it as a grade. And wow, that David Phelps trade was just really kind of a diamond in the rough that no one remembers. And Seattle really gave us a really good guy and for just a little bit of David Phelps.
Did you say Brian Miller or
Brian Miller? Bryan. So not like our Brian Miller that went to UNC. This is a different one.
Yeah. No, yeah. You look back at the trade and Pablo, top 3 starter.
Right.
I mean, the guy really helped us out in 2020 because he didn't miss a single game. You look back at it, Pablo really has grown, and now I found out he got traded for David Phelps. I thought it was in another trade, but yeah, it's a great trade. I think you could really give it an A+ because you got Pablo, but the other 2 guys really didn't result. So I would go a simple A.
Yeah, that's exactly what I had. And then I guess we can get into the new regime. Their first trade, well, I'm not counting the Garrett Cooper and Michael King trade. But the first major trade of, the sell-off would be I'd love to get your guys' opinion, is the D. Gordon trade. D. Gordon got traded to the Seattle Mariners on December 7th for Nick Neidert, Christopher Torres, and Robert Duggar. Duggar, I don't think he's with the team anymore. He was just bad news, doo-doo. Christopher Torres is still playing, I think, with low A or high A. He's, just, I think, infield depth for the organization. And then the big piece was Nick Neidert. At the time, was a top prospect. He was a high draft pick for the Mariners. And he was this control guy who was just going to, be a 4th, 5th starter, maybe a number 3 if everything went well. Hasn't performed that well in the big leagues as of yet, but he's a rotation piece that'll be definitely competing for, if not a 5th spot in the rotation, along with bullpen guy.
Yep. I'm going to let you go into this one, Ethan.
Yeah. At the time, it looked like such a huge win when Neidert was in AAA and he was striking everybody out, and kind of hasn't worked out the way I think a lot of people would like. And also he's just gotten surpassed by all the pitching talent that the Marlins organization. Torres, I just thought of when we started going through these trades and I started thinking about the Seattle trades. I loved this guy. I was really high on this guy a long time ago because all he did was walk. He's never had a walk rate in his career below 10.1%. And most of them are in like the 14s and 15s. He's got 19 and 30 games in 2018 in IA. He's got some really good hitting numbers, but it just I don't know what happened. I think he made way too many errors. Never could get it going on the defensive side of the ball. And yeah, his power numbers were never really there. Didn't hit for a lot of power at all, so it never really worked out for him. But he was a guy that I was high on when there was. I was grasping for straws at that point. There wasn't a lot of talent, a lot on the hitting side of the ball, but they've obviously, especially up the middle, brought in a little bit more of that. But yeah, I think in the end, like D kind of fell off right after they traded him, right. And he's bounced around to some teams. And I think Neidert can still be a good like swing piece, a guy you call up when you need an arm for a double header in injury situations. I really wish that the Marlins saw more of him this year, that they kind of let him work out some of his kinks at the big league level. Obviously, there was a lot of roster fluctuation because they were having so many injuries and bullpen days and stuff. But, he was going up and going down, so he could never really get settled at the big league level. But, a lot of people wanted him to stay up here and pitch every fifth day, but he just didn't look ready, honestly. I really think that 2020 was a huge hindrance to him because he had such a great 2019. Gets hurt last year, and it just kind of all threw off all of his mojo. I still think he can contribute to this team. He's got good stuff. When he can locate it well, it's pretty effective. Maybe in a bullpen role, like I said, a long relief role, a swing arm role, that kind of thing. So I wouldn't mind. I think he'll still have a future in this organization for the next couple of years at the very least. But I mean, I don't see him in the rotation in the plans in the rotation anymore. There are just too many talented guys in front of him.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to
go ahead.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to tie into our last conversation about the offseason. I mean, we talked about the bullpen. There are some of these guys that are in AAA could really come up and make an impact in the bullpen. One of them right now, we're talking about Nick Natter. I think this guy could really go into the long reliever role, like you mentioned, because some of these guys really can't go 5 innings in an MLB game. I mean, Nick Natter is one of them, I would say. I mean, AAA, he's nasty, but when you come up here in the MLB, he starts off pretty well, and then little by little, I know it's like, fatigue, you start getting tired, but I think a reliever role would make a lot of sense for Nick Natter. And when you really look at the trade, some of these guys really did fall off, and D. Gordon's one of them. He really fell off after Seattle, especially since they changed his position to center field, and he really just wasn't the same after that, especially after the year where I don't know if it was steroids or what he was taking, but he got caught for something, and after that, he's really fell down from then.
Testosterone.
Yeah.
Yeah, he took a PED. That was funny.
Yeah, that was hilarious. David Sampson told the story of that he came in. Don Mattingly had to come in and just say, "Hey, D. Gordon suspended 80 games," and Barry Bonds, of all people, said, "Are you bleeping kidding me?" Like, really? Like, of all the people in that clubhouse, you're gonna go ahead and say something about D. Gordon getting suspended for PEDs? But yeah, no, back to Natter. Yeah, he just uncharacteristic of him to walk so many guys in 2021. I think he walked. I forgot how many it was. 23 guys in just 35 innings pitched. It was just not who he is. So yeah, he'll be in spring training and he'll still have some value left. But the next trade I want to get into would be, it happened 4 days later. The big one that I was kind of sad about, Giancarlo Stanton coming off his MVP season, traded to the New York Yankees. And let's give a quick refresher. That wasn't the team that Marlins wanted to trade him to. They had framework of a deal to go to St. Louis. They had a framework of a deal to go to San Francisco. I think
Fun fact, Brian Reynolds would have been in that trade.
Yep. Craig Mish told us that little tidbit that he would have been in the trade. So it was a Giant trade, a Cardinal trade that Giancarlo shut down with his no trade clause. He ended up being traded to the New York Yankees along with a lot of cash, just $280 million to be exact, for Starlin Castro, Jorge Guzman, and Jose Devers. So where do we stand on these boys?
Yeah, you can't really look at this one the same way you evaluate some of the other trades because this was clearly they had to do it. They had to dump the salary. The previous regime, handcuffed them so hard with this massive contract that they just had no other choice but to dump G. And they got leveraged into trading him to a place they didn't want to trade him to because he had this no trade clause, and they really were left with no choice. I still think Jose Devers could be a very nice player for the Marlins if he can ever stay healthy. I like the way he looked at the major league level. He was only 21 years old. Nobody expected him to be in the major leagues this year. Everybody was like, this is crazy. What is this guy doing here? And then he kind of really held his own and put some really good at-bats together that I was really intrigued by. But then he got hurt again, and now durability is a huge concern for him. But I still think he can be a really nice player for the Marlins going forward. Starting Castro, it was fun. I remember, at one point I wrote an article to move on from the guy and give Isan Diaz a chance when Isan Diaz was the AAA player, was the minor league player of the year in 2019. I just said it was time to just cut ties, move on from Castro, stop trying to get any value for him. It kind of sounds familiar to what we're doing with some of these guys now. The dialogue with some of these guys now. But I was just saying, it's time to get rid of him and he had some nice moments in a Marlins uniform. He had some good years, but like I said, you can't. It's hard to really evaluate this trade as Lewin Diaz singles up the middle for the Marlins right now. It's hard to really evaluate this trade as anything other than just they were forced into it because of the mishandling of the team by the last regime.
Yeah, at the time, I really wasn't the biggest guy when it came to trades and all this stuff like I am now. But, if I'm correct, Stanton wanted out, or did the Marlins just have to do this?
Oh,
It was both. Yeah, it was both.
Okay.
He was sick, after going through one fire sale. He didn't want to go through another one. And I can't really blame him for that.
Can't blame the guy. I mean, and you look at it, the contract really, I think, is what made it the hardest because you could have had Brian Reynolds, for example. I mean, you look at that now, and the Marlins are most likely going to try to go for him. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Reynolds, first of all. And then Stanton was just one of those scenarios where I didn't know much about it. I knew, we'd gotten a pretty good player in Guzman at the time. Injuries have really held him back. That's been the issue. When he came up, I mean, he looked excited. I was actually able to speak to him. I went to a game, and he was there, and we just took a picture and started talking. He looked like he was going to pitch the day after he got here, and he was going to stay up for good. He was going to stay up for good, and he just couldn't. Devers is another guy who I think was an unexpected call up for sure. I mean, we didn't expect this guy to come up. I think we were talking about Isan coming up, like get Isan or get Eddie Alvarez at the time, but I think he was in the Olympics, or he was gonna go to the Olympics, and then Starlin Castro. I mean, I think you needed some big league talent to get in this trade, and that was the odd man out, I guess, at the time for the Yankees. Miami, I think, didn't mess up big time on the trade. We'll see how Devers really, turns out, but as of right now, it hasn't looked good because from the other trades, I guess you could say, that the Marlins could have gone with the Giants or the Cardinals, it could have looked a lot better if he got into one of those teams, I would say.
Yeah, no, and my 2 cents on this one, obviously, is just about the money, but still, you're Giancarlo in 2017 was one of the best seasons.
He was the MVP.
Of any guy in the world offensively. He hit 60 home runs. He was hitting for average. He just figured it out. He figured out that close stance, and he figured it out. He was coming off an MVP season. You're not trading him and his contract to the Tampa Bay Rays or the Oakland Athletics. You're trading him to the New York Yankees. Yep. So at the time, I remember I was at my friend's house. Like, this is what we got. We're not a top 5 guy in the Yankees for the most valuable player who has control for the rest of his life. So I didn't like it at the time. Starlin Castro being in there was more of a money thing, I think, just like to have some money going the other way. Yep. The Yankee side, but I think Devers will be good. I like Devers a lot. He's had fantastic at bats at such a young age. The guy's 14 years old and he's putting up good at bats in the major leagues. Hopefully he'll stay healthy. But that trade, I gave it a C- because
they got leveraged. There was nothing they could really do with that one.
They had their balls grabbed by Giancarlo. So
I just love how Eli found this article from Starlin the Marlin to Isan the Don. If only we had known back then.
Only we had known.
The regrets I have. The regrets I have.
Yeah. So we can blame Isan's lack of a major league career on Ethan Budowsky. You heard it here first. Just to remind everyone, we're recording this on Tuesday, September 21st. Marlins are playing the Nationals at the moment. So 3 days later, after the Marlins traded Giancarlo Stanton to the Yankees across town, Derek Jeter doing one final favor for the Yanks. The Marlins traded, which is by far the best trade in a long, long time. Very, very, very long time. Marcell Ozuna for 2 years, and let's remind everyone, Ozuna was coming off a fantastic year, a career year, still to this day the best year of his career. If Giancarlo wasn't on his team, Ozuna would have likely been an MVP candidate. He was an MVP candidate. So Marcell Ozuna was traded to the Cardinals on December 14th for Sandy Alcantara, Zach Gallen, Magneuris Sierra, and Daniel Castano. Eventually, later on in 2019, in the 2019 offseason, Zach Gallen was traded to the Arizona Diamondbacks for Jazz Chisholm Jr.
It wasn't the offseason.
Who's that?
It was trade deadline.
Who's Jazz Chisholm Jr.?
Some guy that hasn't put it together yet at the big league level.
Some scrub.
But so basically these two trades, this trade of Ozuna netted the Marlins an ace and an all-star caliber second baseman, electric player in Jazz Chisholm. For 2 years of Marcell Ozuna, who we all know what he can do, what he can't do on the field, and we all know what he does off the field. It's a tremendous, sack of shit.
His career's probably over. At this point, it's crazy to say his career's probably over.
Yeah,
And you
I would
really
say.
look at it, I think the biggest piece of that trade was Mags. I mean, look what he's done for the team as of right now.
Yeah,
He's
no,
probably not even going to be on it next year. That's how good he's been. That the Marlins
yeah.
just can't have him
And,
anymore.
so there's not much to go into about this one. It's just obviously I gave it an A+, Sandy Alcantara, and you really have to give credit not to the Marlins but to Sandy Alcantara for really developing at such an expedited process. In 2018, 2019, you could have a whole tarp behind home plate, and he still would walk 5 guys per 9 innings. Now he's not walking people; he's striking people out. His ERA is 3.1 something. He's having a tremendous year. He's cemented himself as the ace of the staff, maybe the best pitcher in the National League East with DeGrom out. That trade is it's the trade that keeps on giving.
There's only one thing that I think would really mess up this trade. If the Marlins don't re-sign Sandy, if they don't do it, oh Lord, it is gonna bite him in
the good news is they've still got him for 3 years. They still got 3 years of control of him. So it's a win.
How they're gonna handle
it's a win no matter what. And even you look down the line, like Castano was the throw-in here, and he was in contention for a starting job this year. He started. He's been up and down. He's going to provide some value, when they need it. So they did so good, man. And I mean, the Jazz for Gallen trade was looking like a win-win for a long time, and now all of a sudden it's kind of looking like a win for the Marlins because Gallen has kind of struggled since the old sticky stuff situation. But this was such a good deal, and I mean, the crazy thing is that Cardinals organization was so good at the time. They could have done even better. I mean, they picked Sandy over Flaherty, and so they won there, but they could have gotten, there were guys like Bader and Tyler O'Neill, I think, was another guy that a lot of people were throwing around in trade conversations. So they could have done even better, but they still did really, really good. I mean, if you replace Mags with a Tyler O'Neill or a Bader or somebody like that, you're looking at one of the great trades in franchise history. And still to this day, if they lock up Sandy long term, it would be. So they crushed this one. They crushed it.
And you look at it now, I really want to see how the Marlins are going to handle this guy's arbitration because he's going to be asking for money. I mean, the Marlins just have to give him what he wants at this point. I mean, I think the most obvious thing would be extend the guy, but he's going to have to
I wouldn't even let him get pissed off. I wouldn't even let him get pissed off by arbitration.
I want to see what the excuse for the Marlins is going to be this year, to like give him less money or try to keep him out where he is right now.
It doesn't sound like there's going to be any, to be honest with you.
Hopefully
like, obviously, they lowballed him with that first contract offer, kind of, but it just, if they can get him on that 5-year, $50 million deal that Craig Mish talks about, I think they got to pull the trigger there because it looks like they're going to start going into this and they want to have these discussions. They want to get these extensions done. So, especially after he's just pitched better and better and better as the year has gone on since they offered him that deal, I think around deadline time. I think I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic. Craig said you can never be you can be optimistic, but you can never be confident. I'm optimistic that the Marlins will pull off a Sandy extension in the offseason.
Yeah, cautiously optimistic would be
for sure.
The word. Especially with this regime, they really haven't shelled out, and that's one thing that I do miss about the old regime. I know there's not many things, but they extended D. Gordon. They signed D. Gordon. They signed guys like Michael Morris, Matt Latos, who were fucking horrible. But they extended Yelich. They shelled out the money when they needed to. And this regime has yet to do it at any point to give out more than a 2-year deal. So we'll see if that changes now with Sandy. Sandy would be like the perfect example of who to do it on. But anyway, moving on. By the way, on Magneuris Sierra, it was a different regime. So that's my only reason why it doesn't make sense. But when the Cardinals came to Miami that year in 2017, Sierra went off on like a 10 for 12 series and stole bases, caught balls. And like maybe that's what I don't know, but I don't know how you just look at the Cardinals farm system at the time and choose Magneuris Sierra out of all of them.
And something else I'll say is Mags is that kind of guy who's like a bunt and you run player. I think that just doesn't fit in today's game of baseball as much as it used to. Maybe when the trade was made or a little bit before that. He's not that guy anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So moving on to
just one real quick thing, Isaac. You talked about how the old regime, they were different because they handed out extensions. A lot of those extensions didn't work out. So
the Yelich
they threw,
right?
Yeah, the Yelich one, obviously they ended up getting value for Yelich and that looked smart at the time. But look at what they did with Stanton and D and some of these other ones. They they spent the money, but they spent it recklessly. I mean, look at the 2012 free agency, right? So they were willing to cough up more money, but I don't know if they had the right intentions in mind. And
Well,
I hope
mean,
that this regime has the right intentions in mind in terms of they shell out the money for Sandy. They shell out the money for Jesus Aguilar. They should have shelled out the money for Starling Marte or Adam Duvall, at least one of the two. So
right.
I kind of, if Byron Buxton comes, they shell out the money for them. But that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I think they have the same intention, which is to try and win, right? Loria, They wanted to win. They shelled out the money. When they signed Giancarlo in 2014 for that 13 years through 25, I think Loria knew that he was never going to pay the back end of that contract, which was a back-loaded contract at the time. And just so you guys remember, we'll talk about it later. Jose Fernandez passed away, and that they couldn't. Who knows? Maybe Loria never sells if Jose doesn't pass away. They end up paying the whole 13 years, and they could do it if guys. The Marlins were a World Series contender in 2018 in 2017. I'm sorry, if Jose is there. Can't change my mind about that. They were a playoff contending team with Jose at the top of the rotation. Anyway, we're getting off topic. It's a fun conversation to have. Maybe we'll have it for the next one. Anyway, about a month and a half later, the nightmare of all trades happened on January 25th. Christian Yelich shelled out to Milwaukee for Lewis Brinson, Monte Harrison, Isan Diaz, Jordan Yamamoto. Jordan Yamamoto no longer with the team. He's with the Mets, and he's tweeting out some weird things about politics. Monte Harrison is getting into fights in the Marlins clubhouse with the Marlins' best player. Isan Diaz is just not hitting the ball whatsoever. And Lewis Brinson is hanging by a thread in a major league, starting every day in a major league lineup. So obviously this one I gave it a straight F. It's a fail. It's a needs improvement for those in lower school. Couldn't have gone worse, I don't think, especially when you look at the Marlins were considering trading Yelich to Toronto. But hey, we have something fun to talk about. What's worse, this one or the Miguel Cabrera trade?
Well, listen, the Marlins, they were left with no choice here. They had to trade Yelich. He was unhappy here. It wasn't going to work. Man, I don't know. He was really unhappy here, and he was going to be strapping down. Yeah,
this isn't the NBA. This isn't the NBA where the player.
I get you, man. No, I get you, but I just think if you're a rebuilding team and you're starting over, and you have an unhappy, player on your team, and you can fetch. Obviously, it didn't work out, but at the time, you fetched 4 top prospects in that Brewers organization. So at the time, you're looking at it, you're like, they did pretty good. Obviously, it hasn't panned out. Maybe there were some things that they should have seen. And another thing was, I'm pretty sure they tried for Acuna with the Braves, and the Braves obviously didn't bite there. They tried for Bichette or Vlad with the Jays. They didn't bite there. I bet they went back to the Giants and tried for Brian Reynolds if they tried for him with Giancarlo Stanton. So, they tried, right? They made these offers. They were looking to go in the right direction. Lewis Brinson was a consensus top 15, 20 prospect in all of baseball. Hasn't worked. Monte Harrison had a lot of upside, still might have a lot of upside. We don't know. He has 20, even 30 possibly potential. But we just haven't seen it come together at the big league level because he hasn't had enough chances. And there are other reasons for that. But, and then, Isan and Yamamoto looked like he was going to be great at first. And it looked like they kind of got a good, good deal there. Didn't work out. Isan was the 2019 minor league player of the year. Hasn't worked out in the majors. It's just unfortunate. It was kind of what they had to do. And luckily, Yelich, since they unjuiced the balls, has kind of really fallen off. Didn't have a good year last year. Didn't have a good year this year. And I'm, of course, not, he was obviously tremendous. We knew that he could be really good. I don't think anybody thought he could tap into 40 home run power, but we knew that he could all of us were saying this guy can tap into 30 home runs and hit 280, 290. And he went to a different level that none of us maybe expected, but we knew he could be a great player. So yeah, it was unfortunate. And, at the time I was kind of like all in on trading Yelich, but it hasn't worked out, and it's really unfortunate for Brinson and Monte and Isan and Yamamoto. There's a lot of pressure on those guys, and it's more unfortunate, of course, for the franchise because they could have really gotten out to a good start And instead, it kind of set them back a couple of years.
Right. And I'm not arguing the fact I would have traded him as well. I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
Yeah, of course.
But it's just the fact that they had to. They no one has to trade anyone. But yeah, in a rebuilding team, you definitely don't want someone that doesn't want to be there. I think Jeter said that in like the inaugural press conference when he purchased the team. You don't want anyone that doesn't want to be there. Now you can kind of see a culture change in this team. People want to be here. Marte wants to be here. Aguilar wants to be here. Sandy has said he wants to be here. So, Kevin, what are your thoughts on the Yellow trade? That's one or Miguel Cabrera? Which one would you rather have back?
Probably this one. I would.
Miguel Cabrera is a first ballot Hall of Famer. Come on, guys! Like this is not even a question. And they got Bert Badenhop for him. Like obviously they got a little more out of Badenhop and Maben, but he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Yeah. It's one of the worst trades in the history of baseball. Yelich might not be even a Hall of Famer. He had 2 Hall of Fame years, but he hasn't kept it consistent enough. Miguel Cabrera is a first ballot Hall of Famer. Not even a question.
I was hoping that was your answer, Kevin. Is that your answer?
Yeah.
No, yeah. Now that I think of it, yeah, I think it's
now that I think of it.
Trade, yeah. No, yeah, I completely forgot. This guy's gonna be a Hall of Famer. I mean, he's one of the best Latin players to ever play the game. Maybe top 5, maybe even top 3. And what they got back, I mean, maybe the best piece I would say was Cam Maben, but he didn't do too much with the team after that. And quickly, Lewis Brinson was the number 13 prospect in 2017. So he at the time, that trade made all the sense in the world. You're getting a top 15 prospect in Lewis Brinson. You get the future 2019, I think it was, minor league player of the year in Isan Diaz. Mm-hmm. And you get a pretty good player in Jordan Yamamoto, and you get maybe one of the most hyped up prospects in Monte Harrison that the Marlins had that year, and I think right now Monte Harrison, I think that's the big piece I want to look at right now because he hasn't had a fair chance yet. He hasn't had an everyday shot at wherever he's going to play in the outfield. And that's the only reason why I'd hold on to him. But if the team says, I want Monte Harrison as a sweetener, I'm throwing in Monte Harrison as the sweetener because it just makes sense to trade that guy. Yamamoto, he really looked good. He started off 4-0. He was really pitching well. And then all of a sudden in 2020, he just couldn't get it going. Never got it going. And they just got rid of him after that because why keep him? Brinson, I think this might be his best season with the Marlins. He's been producing well offensively. Defensively, he's never been a question to be bad. I think he's always been good defensively, playing center field, right field, left field, mainly right field, I would say. But besides that, this is an F. I mean, Isan's absolute shit. There's no other way to say it. The guy can't stay consistent for a single day in his life. He's been pretty good at third. That's the only thing I could say about Isan. He's been good at third. But besides that, he's been shit. I think he's been worse than Alfaro in some points. So that's something to for sure say there. Yeah, this may be the worst trade this regime has made since entering in 2017.
Yeah, and I think Monte Harrison, I think he's played his last game as a Marlin in the major leagues. When he inevitably gets traded, we can really start to grade this trade even harsher because it just didn't work out. And just one thing I want to discuss of what this farm system looked like before these trades.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Number 1 prospect Tyler Kolek, Austin Dean, Stone Garrett, Thomas Jones, Jake Esch, JT Riddle, Tomas Talis, Dylan Peters. Those are the main guys of this farm system. So it was pretty tough to watch. And now I want to go really quickly because we're running out of time here. Of all these trades, D. Gordon, Marcell Ozuna, Giancarlo, David Phelps, Yelich, there's 3 players that are still here that are going to be contributing, which is Sandy, Jazz, and Pablo. Now, the bigger trades that I think really helped this team today, that have helped these teams today, were the trade deadline deals in 2019 and 2020. You look at the Sergio Romo for Lewin Diaz trade. That was an A, by the way. You get the Nick Anderson and Jesus Sanchez trade. Jesus Sanchez is your right fielder next year. And then you have one more that I'm blanking on. I think that was midseason. Well, we also forgot to talk about the JT Realmuto trade, which you got Sixto Sanchez. Unfortunately, they tried to sign JT Realmuto and not really,
he wanted out. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think he wanted out.
If you want to talk about one that they could have
extended,
put more effort into for keeping, JT was the guy.
Yeah.
Obviously look at what the catcher spot looks like now, and you're looking at that would look a lot better with JT. And if you put the proper money into him, but I don't know that they had the money at the time to offer him the money that he was going to get on the open market. So but they did get Sixto. So, but
Right,
this
exactly.
would have been the one. This would have been the one guy that I'm like, okay, maybe
I was looking at MLB
trade a little bit.
pipeline, and Alfaro was a top 100 prospect
For 5 straight years. For 5 years.
Yeah.
He was number 62 in 2017. You look back at it, I mean, Sixto played a playoff game. He pitched a really good playoff game. I mean,
pitched 2 playoff games, one better than the other.
2 of them, yeah, one good one and one okay one, I would say. And I wasn't able to watch many of those that second round because of school. But besides that, I mean, Sixto hopefully comes back better than ever because he's going to be a huge part of their rotation in 2022. So we'll see what happens with all these trades. And I mean, if you guys want to mention the Luzardo one, but that one, I think we would have to wait at least 2 years down the road to see what that one.
We've discussed enough sad trades. Let's not even bring another one into it.
Jesus Luzardo, you mean Aroldis Chapman, Andrew Miller, Brad Hand?
Those guys, right?
I'm just saying. Look, I'm kind of starting to lean towards that because they made the mistake with Miller. They made the mistake with Hand. Learn from the mistake. Obviously, they're going to give him every single chance he can to start because they traded him for Starling Marte.
Yeah.
But I think at this point, if you take Starling Marte and you trade him for Andrew Miller, and Luzardo's 23 years old, and you say, I'm getting basically Andrew Miller for this. Not bad. So
yeah, he's got the stuff, and you just hope because sometimes it works. In Andrew Miller's case and Brad Hand's case, it worked out. But a lot of times when you put a starter in the bullpen, sometimes it doesn't. But the stuff is just too good for it not to work in just in a 1 to 2 inning role in the bullpen from the left side with that wipeout curveball and a high 90s fastball. I agree. I wouldn't even give him more starts past this year.
So I think I want to go in a little bit in the minor leagues. We don't have too much time, but I mean, I think we could do a quick scan. And I think the main news why I wanted to talk about the minors, which was Max Meyer and Burdick both got called up to AAA, which it's really good news because I think maybe next year they're back. They're in the bigs. They make their debuts 2022. Hopefully the season doesn't go to hell, but I mean, if it does, obviously you call the guys up earlier than September to make their debuts. I mean, I'm gonna start with you, Ethan. What do you think about the call up?
I like it. I would have liked to see Blade go up as well, just to finish off the year with some ABs because I would be interested to see him against AAA pitching. Honestly, it's worse pitching than AA, and the ball tends to fly a little better in AAA. So I would have liked to see him in AAA just get 2 weeks of bats to finish up the season and try and put a bow on a bad season. But I think they're gonna do that with the Arizona Fall League. He seems like a great candidate to go out there and get some ABs and try to impact baseball a little more. And obviously in the Arizona, dry air, that could be a pretty good idea for him. Pretty good environment for him to hit. And it worked for Jazz. They sent Jazz out there, and he was great out there. So I think that's a really good spot for him, and maybe a guy like Hostetler. But looking forward to seeing Burdick against AAA pitching. Looking forward to see him in spring training. A great finish to the season, pretty up and down season, but still put together some really nice numbers despite not hitting for a lot of average. You're gonna pulling up the stats now, but had a really nice year, all things considered. 137 weighted runs traded plus, 23 home runs, 848 OPS. He struck out a little too much, 29.3 strikeout percentage, 231 batting average. Didn't have a really high BABIP, so like he did in 2019. So that probably contributed to the lower batting average a little bit. But kid's a stud. I'm still pretty high on this kid, and I don't know that he's an opening day 2022 option. I think if you look at him and De La Cruz are competing for the third outfield spot, then they kind of went a little wrong. That's the scenario where you're looking, okay, maybe they didn't do enough in the offseason. And then, with Meyer, put him up against AAA pitching and see how he does. Just get some more innings. He's going to go, I think Eli said he's going to go over 100 innings this year, which is pretty good. I think that's some really nice news for the Marlins to send these guys up. It's a smart move. And like I said, I would have liked to see JJ go up as well. But these are the two guys that, maybe they get a shot on the major league roster at the beginning of the year. So I like both these moves, and I'm interested to see how they do. Burdick, that game's starting tonight, and he's hitting second and playing in left. So
Yeah, Isaac.
No, I mean, just Pensacola's last couple series were canceled due to COVID. It's just about getting them more reps, getting them more reps at AAA, and it'll be great. It's not a bad move. With JJ Bleday, it would have been tough to just promote him to AAA. I know it's not really a promotion to AAA. It's just to get him more at bats. So I would have seen no problem with that. I don't know why they didn't. But yeah, he'll definitely go to the Arizona Fall League, I would assume, just to get, again, more reps, more at bats. And hopefully we'll see these guys in the high minors next year. And all three of them should be making their debuts sometime in 2022.
Yeah, and I think that's just showing you don't call it Bleday. That means they don't think he's even ready for 2022. I mean, they call it Burdick over Bleday, and they call it Meyer as well. I think those guys for sure at some point will make the debut in 2022. And just a quick scan through the minors, I just want to do one quick question on that. I mean, Ethan, what are the guys that right now in the minors you've kind of given up on? Because I know you talked about one of the Mesa brothers you've kind of given up on. I know Alex Carver, our good friend, he kind of hates us for that. But I mean,
he'll never give up on anybody. I think 7 years
that's
from
true.
now, when Victor Mesa is playing in Cuba, he'll be like, I think Victor Mesa can still play in the major leagues. So I love Alex. It's one of the things I love about him is that he'll never give up on any of these prospects until the day he dies. But yeah. I'll just go ahead and answer. Victor, I'm out on. I've seen enough. I think he finally just found a level he can hit at, and he had a great year. He had a great finish in high A. It was nice to see. I'm happy for the kid, but there's too much there, baggage and bad results for me to say that he's ever going to be a major league player. I'm not super high on Connor Scott. He had a nice year, all things considered, but just hasn't tapped into enough power. He's starting to be, I think he's already like 22. And I'm just kind of looking at the guy, and everybody keeps telling, he's 21, and everybody keeps telling me, he's going to tap into this power and he's going to really break out. And he had a nice year. He hit 276, 112 weighted runs created plus, 779 OPS. But never been super high on him anyway. And I'm higher on guys like Meisner and Burdick and Bleday and some of these other outfield prospects. Guy I was really disappointed in this year, and injuries may have played a factor, is Gerard Encarnacion. I was hoping Gerard could be the DH next year for the Marlins. I think that's pretty much out of the picture now. And, he'll probably have to repeat AA and see if he can, be what we thought he would be. But kind of losing some hope there. Guys I'm out on. Chris Mokma, a high school pick from the 2019 draft, really struggled in Jupiter this year. That was really concerning. I think they had high hopes for him and Fitterer. Fitterer was a little better, but Mokma really struggled. Can't really think of any other ones than that. I'm certainly not giving up on Bleday. The guy has too much talent. He has too pretty of a swing to just lose it all in one season. So I think I'm willing to kind of keep rolling with him. But he's got a lot to prove next year for sure. That's for sure. He's got a lot to prove. So 2022 is going to be a really interesting year for the Marlins minor leaguers, because if they improve the major league roster, how many of these minor league guys are going to be real contenders to play at the big league level over some of the guys that they're going to be acquiring? That becomes an interesting question. It's going to be a proven year for a lot of guys. Connor Scott, Bleday. It's an interesting 2022 season, and as always, a very interesting farm system.
Yeah, no, I want to touch on one of the guys you mentioned, Connor Scott. He was a high school pick. He was an interesting pick at the time of 2018. There was a lot of guys on the board. He reminds you of just Kyle Tucker of the Astros. They went to the same high school, Plant.
Yep.
So they went to Plant in Tampa. A friend of mine that I played high school baseball with, Chase Sanguinetti, he also went to Plant with Chase there with Connor. And they were teammates, and I asked him, I was like, what are your thoughts? This is our first pick with a new regime. He's like, this kid just rakes. He was a man among boys in high school, and he played okay in his first full season. COVID I think a lot of these offensive prospects are going to take, unfortunately, another year to just get, reacclimated to this full season ball, because he's a high school kid. It's not easy. And Kyle Tucker, if you guys remember, he struggled a lot in the big leagues. People were saying, forget it, he sucks. And Cal Tucker, ironically, was one of the guys mentioned for a JT Realmuto return. But yeah, no, Connor Scott, I think this would have to be the year. I want to see him at Double-A in 2022 at some point, and he needs to perform because we're running out of time on that one. This will be the 4th year since he's been drafted, so this is a big one for him.
Yeah, that's the guy I really wanted to mention that I think I'm just if he doesn't do anything next season, I think I would be.
And he's the only guy in that draft. It was Will Banfield, it was Osiris Johnson, it was those 3 guys who just haven't panned out.
Tristan Pompey was the 4th one.
Yeah, Tristan Pompey.
I think was it Pompey?
It was Tristan Pompey.
Yeah.
He was a college pick. He was Dalton Pompey's cousin or something.
That's when I really started following the system. That was like when I started doing what's it called? What was that, Eli? Things we love to see. That was when I first joined Fish Stripes, and that was that draft class. Yeah,
I've been following this system since they had Jake Marisnik and
Jared Cozart. Very fun. That was talk about a bad trade. Jesus.
Yeah, Jake. Who else was in that?
Colin Moran.
Colin Moran was that first UNC. He was that draft pick UNC. What's his name? The fat one. No, Canada. The Canadian.
Josh Naylor.
Josh Naylor. Yeah. Yeah, that was just.
They had Luis Castillo too. I mean,
Luis Castillo.
Yeah, imagine what this team would look like if all those guys.
Dan Straley. Yeah, this team has gone through a lot. But I guess the one last thing we want to talk about is, we're in September. We're looking at, teams that are rolling out some September call-ups. We have some teams that are competing for playoff spots. The Marlins, unfortunately, are the former. And we're here looking at which team do you guys think has the dimmest future? They're not good right now. They're not going to be good next year. They're not going to be good anytime soon. I have my team in mind. All right, if you want, Ethan, you go ahead and start since you're a special guest.
Oh man, there's a team in the National League East, but I'll let you take that one. Isaac. I'm gonna go with the. Man, there's some bad teams.
You know what? I was scared of picking one of your favorite teams because that's one that I.
They did okay. And they've got Brennan Davis, who I'm really happy with.
Yeah, their farm system wasn't that bad.
Really excited for. But man, it looks bleak for the. I'm going to go with the Rockies. That's who I'm going to go with. I was going to say the Diamondbacks, but they've got some nice prospects there. I'm going to go with the Rockies. This team, I have no idea what the fuck they're doing, to be honest with you. They traded Nolan Arenado. All signs point that they're going to trade Trevor Story to make up for the fact that they didn't really do that great for Arenado. And then they didn't trade Trevor Story. And he's just going to walk in free agency. So they're not going to get anything for him. So they're not going to have anything to build their farm system off of. They don't have a lot of other pieces that they can trade. Brendan Rodgers actually finally came on and had a good year. It looked like an actual serviceable MLB hitter finally. It only took him 12 years. But, I don't know. They never have any pitching because of Coors Field. They don't seem to be willing to spend any money to improve the team. Maybe they shock everybody and they re-sign Story and they go out and make some big-time money acquisitions. But this team looks like a disaster. I don't think they really have anything in the pipeline coming behind any of these guys. So, I'm looking up and down. And, the Pirates, they've got good pieces, but they're perennially rebuilding. The Diamondbacks, it looks pretty bleak. The Twins, I don't know where they are. They're kind of in the middle because they were supposed to be good this year and they were terrible. And they don't have a lot behind. It's but for the Rockies, it's really ugly. So I'm gonna go ahead and say the Rockies.
Yeah, that's a good one. That was actually like number 3 on my list. And fun fact about Brendan Rodgers, me and my team, we faced him in Arizona, and that kid, he hit one 560 feet to left field off the best pitcher we had in Robert Dudon. He hit one, and I've never seen a ball hit that far. You know that clip of Barry Bonds anyone in Anaheim? That's the first I've ever seen hit. That was that shit. But Kevin, who's your shittiest team now and in the future?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of them. Obviously, I would like to say the Marlins, but I'm not. They actually have something for next season. Nah, I mean, obviously it's a joke. I don't think the Marlins are going to be shitty next year. Hopefully, I had the Twins in mind. The Rangers, they have some pretty good prospects. I'm going to go with the Diamondbacks, even though they have some pretty good prospects. I mean, it's a team that probably is going to trade Ketel Marte in the offseason. Then I don't really know. I mean, I don't know the Diamondbacks that well, but I know they're pretty shitty. They got 100 L's. They should have traded Bumgarner. There's no need for him to be losing on a losing team. I think he should be out there trying to compete for a World Series. And the Cubs are going to be pretty bad the next couple of years. Sorry, Ethan, but Patrick Wisdom's came along. They're and depending what they get in the Wilson Contreras trade, because that guy's gone. Unless they're going to rebuild around him, which would shock me. But if they get something good in a Wilson Contreras trade, maybe they have a pretty good future. They're starting from the bottom up, literally what the Marlins did. Nationals are doing the same thing. And then you talk about the Rockies. I have no idea what they're doing. They're probably going to trade Blackman in Story. There's a lot of bad teams. I can't see the Orioles because the Orioles actually have some pretty good prospects I actually like. There's a lot of bad teams there. I'm going to go with the Diamondbacks. I actually expected them to be decently competitive this season. Maybe not make the playoffs, but for at least third place in the division, which is not where they're at right now.
Yeah, no, the Diamondbacks are a mess right now. It's tough to see. They're 48 and 102, which is pretty freaking bad. That's good for a winning percentage of 320. The Rockies, for all intents and purposes, haven't been that bad this year, but you just know they don't have the prospects. They're 70 and 79, obviously eliminated in that tough division, but they haven't been horrible. But I don't see the prospects or literally meaning the word prospects, like anything that will show me that they have a good future. But my team I don't think the Rangers are going to be very good anytime soon either.
Yeah,
but
she's just that organization.
The Rangers, they're a mess. They have this new ballpark, and they did the opposite of what the Marlins did. They went into a rebuild into their opening year of their ballpark, which was an interesting marketing strategy. But the team that I'm going to go with, you all know, is the Washington Nationals, man. That team, they're 2 years removed from a World Series winning team.
Disaster.
They had all the guys that were there. They had Max Scherzer. They still have Strasburg. They had Trey Turner. They have Juan Soto. And I was looking at their farm system, and they have two. I like Keibert Ruiz a lot. I really wanted him at some point for the Marlins. I think he's going to be a stud. Yeah. And that pitcher, their Aaron Cervelli, that's their number 2 prospect. That right-handed pitcher, he's really good. But other than that, all their top 30s are just guys in low A or below and rookie ball.
They also have Josiah Gray, but I don't know if he graduated.
Right, Josiah Gray, he graduated, and they're just none of them are projected to be big league regulars, big league starters. They're all just complementary pieces, either utility or relievers. And man, it's just they did that trade of Max Scherzer and Trey Turner. They got back Josiah Gray, but other than that, and Keibert Ruiz, but they didn't get much else. And for one of the best pitchers of this generation, and for one of the best shortstops in the game. So
and not only that, Isaac. They traded Schwarber. They traded who else? They moved on from Lester. They cleaned house, and I would be willing to say them, but they did do good for. They didn't do good enough considering that they traded Max Scherzer and Trey Turner to the Dodgers, those fuckers. But how do you do that? That's like when all those teams would just give New England the best defensive lineman. It was like, what the fuck are you thinking? How could you possibly do that? So that was kind of bad, but I was willing to say them, but they still have some pieces, and that organization is pretty good at acquiring prospects and stuff, and Strasburg and yada, yada, yada behind them. But man, it fell apart quick there. And it is embarrassing, to say the least, to 2 years removed from a World Series be worse than the Marlins. That is embarrassing.
Yeah, it really. And to give those 2 guys to the Dodgers, it's like Kevin Durant going to the fucking Golden State Warriors, man. It's just, why do you do that, man? It's just not dope. But the whole trade was Max Scherzer, Trey Turner for Keibert Ruiz, Josiah Gray, and Gerardo Carrillo and Donovan Casey. So it was 2 for 2, basically, because the other 2 guys are not projected big leaguers or anything like that. So it was a tough trade for them, and that's why they're my team with the dimmest future, because I know that's good for the Marlins, man, because that's just one team. The other 3 teams in the division probably have decent futures. The Philadelphia Phillies don't have a good farm system at all. So that's a team that if they don't spend the money, they're not going to be very good. They might have to go through a rebuild, in my opinion, at some point soon. So, you're just dealing with the Mets and the Braves have been underwhelming, and the Mets, they're going to have $1 billion to spend whenever they want. So that's going to be tough. But, it should be a fun division for the Marlins to compete in for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, with the Phillies, I think I would just give it another year. They don't make the playoffs.
They're going to have to
really start considering trading some of these guys.
Yeah,
and I think they really lived off a lot of money, because Bryce Harper, what was the deal? 13 years?
330, I think.
Yeah, and then JT gets a 2-year deal.
He gets 5 years, $80 million.
It was 5 years. All right. Yeah. And then they got some other guys. Aaron Nola, I think they re-signed him, if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing they just don't do is the bullpen. If they had a solid bullpen, that team would be probably at the top of the division right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I think at one point in the 13 years of Harper's career there, they're going to have to rebuild at one point. So I'm just I definitely think so. They have nothing coming up.
I would like to see them make the playoffs. I don't think it's going to happen at this point, but I would like to see, because I just want some new blood up there.
Yeah,
you know?
They're only 3 games back of the Braves in the division, so it's definitely possible. But only 12 games left.
Yep. And I think this is where we're going to end it. Ethan, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, it was great to be with you guys.
Yeah.
Sorry for keeping you guys around so long, but it was a good time, and I'm looking forward to streaming on Friday, I think, right? Well, we'll see.
Friday. Well, yeah, they've already seen it by then, but
family's in town for Tennessee this weekend, so good talking to you guys. Yeah, Gators in Tennessee this weekend, and Dolphins and fucking who do we play? The Raiders, right?
Yeah, that was bad. That was really bad.
Yeah, this last game was tough, but
yeah.
Thanks for having me, fellas. I would love to join you anytime. You guys can always ask me to be on. I will always help you guys out. So appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Man. And
that's a wrap, everybody.